is huge. All right, before we officially get started, Teresa, are you okay to manage the waiting room if anyone else joins?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And everyone, oops, let's get that. You don't want to look at yourselves. Let's move that. All right. Good morning, everybody. I am Melissa Mackedon, and doing this presentation with me today is Samantha King Powell, our General Counsel, and we will get started. Maybe, there we go. Sorry, just one second. I'm like in a new office trying to kind of figure out a new setup. Here we go. We are asking that each of you have a means to take notes during this meeting. You will more than likely hear things during this meeting that you realize your board is not doing or that did not happen when you joined the board. Please make a list of those things, then go back to your board chair and school leader and start prioritizing next steps. This is going to be an overview of just basically good governance principles. It's going to be centered around our good governance standards. We're going to talk about why it matters. We're going to talk about AB 419, and we're going, like I said, we're going to talk a lot about our governance standards. If you've been in a charter school that was clearly advancing on its mission and increasing academic achievement, you can be certain that a high-performing board is hard at work in partnership with the school leader. If you've seen a charter school failing to achieve its goals, however, chances are an underperforming board is behind the scenes. Time and again, there is irrefutable connection between the effectiveness of the charter schools board and the success of the school, and that is from the National Alliance of Public Charter Schools. The bottom line is this: you will not find a successful school operating without an effective board. And very rarely will you find an effective board behind a school that is not thriving.
As a board member, ask yourself this question. Have you read your school's charter contract? If not, please take time to get your hands on a copy and read it, or better yet, ask that the contract be brought back up as an informational item on an upcoming agenda. This way, every member of your board will have access to the contract and can read it. AB 419, codified as NRS 388A.224, contains 3 requirements. 1. Charter school sponsors must establish governance standards for sponsored charter schools. 2. Training regarding the governance standards must be provided by the charter school sponsor or another organization to be approved by the charter school sponsor. And 3. Each member of the charter school governing body must participate in training regarding the standards before the charter school opens and at least every 3 years.
Okay, I didn't have any corrections. Does anyone else have any corrections?
Hey, if you just joined, can you please make sure that
Like they all can read.
Annette, can you please mute yourself? Thank you.
And then it's like anyone opposed to that, so approved.
Annette, we can hear you guys. Thank you. The SPCSA has a list of approved trainers on our website. Your board can contract with any one of those trainers. You can also access the recording of this training and include the link with your school onboarding materials for new board members. This is the fastest and most inexpensive way for you to ensure new board members get this training before their first meeting.
Governance versus compliance. Effective boards must balance each governance and compliance. Boards should ensure that compliance is part of the governance strategy, but not the sole focus. Of course, the day-to-day responsibilities of compliance are delegated to the school leader. So how can a board oversee compliance? Ask your school leader as part of their update item to include a list of the reports that were due between board meetings, their due date, and the date they were turned in. Not only will this allow the board to have some oversight over compliance, but it will also give you a huge appreciation for the amount of reporting required in Nevada. This slide shows the difference between governance and compliance.
If your school is not meeting standards academically, organizationally, or financially, the board is ultimately responsible. While it is true that leadership and staff manage the day-to-day responsibilities of operating the school, if you are missing the mark on any of these measures, you have a responsibility to hold leaders responsible. Ideally, you can work together as a team to improve, but sometimes as a board, you have to make hard decisions regarding the ability of the person tasked with the day-to-day operations. The examples on these slides, so how we're going to do the remainder of the slideshow is that we will go back and forth. Sam and I will be working together on this. But what we want to make really clear is that these things listed in the what it looks like in action column, they are not a comprehensive list of what fulfilling these standards look like. Rather, they are intended to give a few baseline examples of how we have seen some of our high-performing boards fulfill the standards we're talking about. So again, this is not a comprehensive list, and it does not encompass everything that is possible.
The first standard focus on student growth, achievement, and social and emotional well-being. Number 1, understand the academic performance expectations established by the state of Nevada and the State Public Charter School Authority.
So what does that look like in action? The NSPF and the SPCSA academic framework are reviewed annually with your board so they understand what is being measured. If you have board members who don't understand what is being measured on the NSPF and the academic performance framework, that is step 1. The school's specific results are shared with the board at a public meeting.
Number 2, commit to the academic, behavioral, social, and emotional success of all enrolled students and the overall academic success of the school.
What does that look like in action? It means that at every single meeting, you are talking about academics in some way.
Next, set ambitious and attainable goals for student academic growth and achievement that aim to ensure the success of all students.
What does that look like in action? It means that 1 to 3 board members, just make sure you don't have a quorum, are part of your school's performance plan committee. The board members should be intimately involved in developing that plan.
Next, establish objectives for student social and emotional well-being that aim to ensure an inclusive, positive, and supportive environment for all students.
What does that look like in action? Your board looks at the results of the Nevada School Climate Survey. If you don't know what we're talking about, every year your school takes 5th grade on up, takes the Nevada School Climate Survey, and your board should be looking at those results. They just came out last week, so ask your school leader about them. Your school counselor or social workers are invited to a board meeting to highlight their work. Your counselors use a board-approved social emotional learning curriculum.
The next standard is ensure an effective and well-run organization. Number 1, understand organizational performance expectations established by the State Public Charter School Authority.
What does it look like in action? Board members attend or watch the SPCSA training on the Organizational Performance Framework. The OPF outcomes are reviewed and approved by your board annually.
Number 2, uphold the legal and ethical duties of the school's board. Ensure that the board meets all compliance and reporting requirements.
Although the statute only requires quarterly meetings, a well-run school should meet far more often, especially in its first 5 years. Almost every month, there are reports due that require board approval. That cannot happen if boards are not meeting.
Number 3, uphold legal requirements for charter schools under state and federal laws and regulations and comply with the terms of the charter contract.
What does that look like in action? Excuse me. The board takes seriously complaints regarding special education or other issues regarding state or federal law.
Number 4, regularly monitor operational data to ensure the organizational health of the school and monitor progress towards the State Public Charter Schools Authority organizational performance expectations.
What does that look like in action? The board gets reports at every meeting of all the reports that were due, their due date, and the date they were submitted.
Establish and uphold school board policies that protect the organization, its students, and employees.
What does that look like in action? The board updates applicable policies after each legislative session. The board reviews and updates all policies on a regular schedule. Certainly, board policies are not up. Every board policy isn't approved every single year, but your school should be on a cycle where you're reviewing a certain number and making sure that there are no changes that need to be made, at every meeting throughout the year on a schedule.
Next, ensure the school has strong operational plans for facilities, food services, transportation, security, and emergency preparedness.
The board approves plans as appropriate in a public meeting. The board approves a drill schedule, and the annual drill log is presented to the board before its June 15th due date.
Ensure all board meetings are conducted in accordance with Nevada's open meeting law and that the board operates in accordance with the school's bylaws.
So what does that look like in action? All active board members have taken the open meeting law training provided by the SPCSA or one of its approved trainers.
Our third standard that we want to focus on is managing financial resources responsibly. Number 1, understand financial performance expectations established by the State Public Charter School Authority.
So what does that look like in action? Every board member has attended or has viewed the SPCSA training on the financial performance framework. I would also add that just last week, NDE published, and we sent it out to every school leader, that they're going to be doing a training on how the pupil-centered funding formula works. If you have board members who are unfamiliar with that, it's a great training to take advantage of, and one example of how this standard would look in action.
Next, annually establish and manage a budget that allocates resources in alignment with the school's goals and strategic plan.
So what does that look like in action? It means that the board approves a conservative budget by the legal due dates, and that the budget has line items that are connected to the school performance plan.
Regularly review financial data and adjust the school's budget or operations as appropriate.
So what does this look like in action? It means that the board will approve an amended final budget throughout the year as appropriate. For example, maybe after the October 1 count, your enrollment is vastly different than what you had in your final budget. You would want to approve an amended final budget. Or maybe partway through the year, around this time of year, when your budget's to actuals, you look at your budget to actuals and you want to do an amended final budget. Please make sure when you do an amended final budget that you submit a copy to NDE and the SPCSA.
Establish and uphold financial policies and procedures that protect the school's resources.
What does that look like in action? The board has an approved financial policy manual and the school leadership adheres to those policies.
Next, regularly monitor financial performance to ensure the short and long-term financial health of the school and to monitor progress towards the State Public Charter Schools Authority performance expectations.
What does that look like in action? This isn't a comprehensive list. It's just an example that monthly board should review all expenses, budgets to actuals, cash flow, things like that.
The fourth standard we're going to talk about is committing to long-term success. Number 1, oversee the development and implementation of the school's strategic plan, which aims to bring to fruition the school's mission and vision.
So what that looks like in action is that the board has approved a 5 to 10-year budget projection, and that the board has long-term academic and enrollment goals.
Understand the state public charter schools authority strategic plan and priorities, and work to create alignment between the authority's goals and the school's goals.
So what does that look like in action? The board has seen a copy of the SPCSA's 2025 to 2030 strategic plan and has discussed what steps their school is taking to ensure success of the plan.
Next, establish board committees to further the strategic plan and school goals.
So what does this look like in action? It looks like the board maybe has a financial committee, an academic committee, and a governance committee. We do want to remind you at this time that it is allowable for charter schools to have committees, but committees must follow open meeting law. And if you are using committees, please make sure and go back and review that open meeting law training and make sure that you are using them in accordance with what we outlined in that training. Is there anything specific you want to add about that, Sam?
Yes, so I can go over that just really quickly. If a subcommittee has at least an equal number of board members who are not on the board, they can make recommendations to the board. Or the board could vote to create a subcommittee under the following situations. The subcommittee is created during an open and public meeting as part of a specific agenda item and for that specific purpose. Or the subcommittee is given express authority by the full board to come back with it for recommendation for action. If either of those are not true, the subcommittee can present the data and information it has gathered and summarize its work, but cannot present recommendations. The next one is regularly assess the board's effectiveness in meeting those governance standards and achieving strategic goals.
So what would that look like in action? Maybe the board discusses these standards and identifies strengths and next steps for improvement annually.
The next one is engage in meaningful board training conducted by independent individuals and organizations.
So what does that look like in action? The board attends conferences or reads a book related to good governance and discusses it at a board meeting or annual retreat.
The next standard is maintain an engaged board, ensuring compliance with all bylaws and statutory requirements for board members.
What does that look like in action? The board has robust conversations related to items on the agenda during board meetings. The board has reviewed board materials in advance of the board meeting.
Proactively plan for potential board member transitions and ensure effective onboarding for new board members.
What does that look like in action? The board could continually collect resumes for prospective interested new members. The board has a short list of potential candidates for required positions on the board. The board has an onboarding process for new board members that includes the board handbook, ethics, bylaws, SPCSA trainings, including open meeting law training, good governance training, and the performance frameworks.
Our fifth standard that we're going to talk about is ensuring strong leadership and effective partnerships. First, hire school leaders that are committed to the school's model and mission and is capable of leading staff and students to achieve strong results and meet established goals.
So what does that look like in action? It looks like the hiring process being rigorous and complying with NRS. It takes place in a public meeting.
Commit to uphold the boundary between governing the school and leading the daily school operations.
What does that look like in action? The board does not get involved in day-to-day operations, but does hold the school accountable for them.
Hold school leadership accountable for the operations and performance of the school, addressing challenges proactively.
So what does that look like in action? The board understands that it is their job to hold the school leader accountable and make what can be tough and uncomfortable decisions if the school's goals are not being met.
Regularly evaluate school leader performance based on established expectations, encourage and support their professional development.
So what does that look like in action? It looks like the board annually evaluating the school leader in a public meeting against the established set of criteria.
Proactively plan for the development of future leaders and their succession.
So what does that look like in action? The board ensures that a grow your own program is in place at the school, meaning you have identified with the help of your school leader potential individuals who work at your school who have qualities that you would want to see in a school leader, and you start developing them, giving them extra responsibilities, and really just growing them so that should you have a school leader leave, you have someone within your system who is familiar with your system and you've been working with to become a school leader.
Next, establish clear, specific contracts with key partners, including education management organizations, charter management organizations, and back office service providers that set clear expectations, expirations, termination, performance, and outcomes.
So what does it look like in action? It looks like the board approving contracts. It looks like the board chair signing contracts in accordance with state statute. It looks like the board regularly reviewing and evaluating their performance of their vendors and partners, including EMOs and CMOs.
Hold partners accountable for their services and performance, addressing challenges proactively.
So what does that look like in action? When you are evaluating the performance of vendors and partners, including CMOs, you have to sometimes make tough decisions. We've certainly have seen schools who have made the tough decision to say, man, this EMO or this vendor is no longer serving us. We're going to cut ties with them. So their boards really took responsibility when they were doing that evaluation, and they held partners accountable.
Regularly evaluate partnership based on established expectations for performance outcomes.
And this one looks like I forgot to fill in a due date, which I still don't know, so I'll have to punt on this one. But the board approves the annual vendor review before it is due in Epicenter.
Next, operate in service of your school community. Number 1, ensure that the school's board meetings and its members are accessible to the school community, including parents, teachers, and students.
So what does that look like in action? It looks like a school emailing out agendas for all public meetings to all enrolled parents or guardians. It looks like schools providing a way for parents or guardians to participate virtually.
Develop and consider school policies and critical decisions transparently in collaboration with the school community.
What does that look like in action? It can look like having a parent or parents on your governance committee.
Next, establish effective communication systems and proactively seek robust input and feedback from the school community.
What does that look like in action? It looks like ensure that the board's contact information is easy to find on the school website.
Collaborate with stakeholders to address concerns and challenges.
Ensure that parents and other relevant stakeholders are involved in high-stakes decisions.
Next, seek to achieve and maintain board members and school staff that are representative of the school.
What does that look like in action? It looks like having a diverse board that represents your student body. And with that, we have covered all of the governance standards approved by the State Public Charter School Authority Board. We've given you a few examples of how those standards look in action with a good high functioning board, and we are happy to take any questions that you may have. All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Hopefully you have jotted down a couple of things that you can take back to your school leader as next steps to improve your governance. And as always, please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions or concerns. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.